With his immense size, Derrick Henry has been one of the best running backs in football over the past decade. But what if I told you that the secret to his dominance isn't his imposing figure? Let's change how you watch Derrick Henry forever. Derrick Henry has run for over 10,000 yards in his 8-year NFL career and has one of only 8 2,000-yard seasons in NFL history. And at 30 years old, he's still playing at an MVP level for the Baltimore Ravens. But what makes him so good? It's his size and his strength, right? Well, in his breakout year of 2018, he did lead the league in attempts per broken tackle, at only 6.3 attempts per broken tackle, which meshes with the idea that he's a bowling ball at running back. But since then, what if I told you that Derrick Henry's broken tackle rate metrics have actually been merely above average? Each year, about 50 people qualify to rank for the statistic. In 2019, he ranked 12th overall, behind guys like Alvin Kamara and Aaron Jones. In 2020, he was 12th again, behind the likes of Antonio Gibson and Austin Eckler. And in his 9 games in 2021, he was all the way down at 38th, with a broken tackle once every 22 attempts. He rebounded into the top 5 in 2022, but fell to 16th in 2023 and is currently 13th in 2024. He does stand near the top in terms of total number of broken tackles, but that's a result of him having so many more carries than his peers. But actually, I'd argue what makes him an elite running back is his speed. If you ignore for a second the fact that Henry is 6'3", 247 pounds, what kind of runner do you see in these clips? I see someone with a gliding style of running, who can get up to full speed and blow by people. There's also some stiff arms there, which we'll talk about too, but the differentiating factor to me is his speed. Let's take a run like this one against Seattle a few years ago. If you pause it right here, what do you expect an average running back to get out of this run? Probably about 12 yards total, nothing more. Safeties are usually faster than running backs, or at least the same speed. But Henry kicks it into another gear, gets past the defender, and takes it to the house. It's shocking every time he turns on the jets like that, at that size. Without knowing anything about him but his size, you may have expected Henry to try to run over the defender, or at least take him on more head-on. Henry clearly outweighs the defender, who's 5'9" and 197 pounds. But the smarter move, with his speed, is to just run around him to the end zone. And yeah, he gives him a nice little stiff arm to finish it off, but his speed is what got him to the end zone. In 2024, through 12 games, Henry has 14 runs of 20 yards or more, tops in the league and good for a big play rate of 6.33%, also first in the league among running backs with at least 50 carries. Comparatively, his broken tackle rate for that same group ranks 13th at 13 carries per broken tackle. He also has the longest rush of the entire season, this 87-yard touchdown against the Bills, which showed off his long speed, even at 30 years old, more so than his strength. And though the big play numbers aren't as impressive for his career, his best big play years correlate with his best overall seasons. When his big plays went down between 2021 and 2023, he wasn't a dominant back. He still had the volume in 22 and 23 to rank near the top of the league in yards, but his impact wasn't as great. Now, I'm not saying that he's easy to bring down by any means. It's just that if you know a giant running back had 2,000 yards in a season, you'd assume it was because he was bowling people over left and right. And confirmation bias makes people generally lean into that trope every time he does something remotely physical. Next time you're watching a Ravens game, take notice of how the announcers handle calling his contributions. They're quick to say he's imposing his physical will. But at his best, compared to his peers, he's actually better at breaking long runs than breaking tackles. When you think of a running back breaking tackles, too, it's usually by lowering his head and running someone over, or powering through an arm tackle like Earl Campbell. Take Najee Harris, who's close to Henry year over year in terms of broken tackle rate. The majority of his broken tackles are done in a way you'd think a power back would break tackles. But there are other ways to break tackles, and Henry's main go-to move is the stiff arm. More so than his weight, Derrick Henry's arm length probably helps him in breaking tackles, with the stiff arms he's able to dole out. Defenders can't even get into his body to try to tackle him if he executes an effective stiff arm, because his arms are so long. But when people marvel at his size, it's not like they're looking at his arms. It's just his pure mass. Take the photo that went viral back when Henry was in college at Alabama. He was standing next to Mark Ingram, a fellow Alabama Heisman Trophy winning running back, and he absolutely dwarfed him. He made Ingram, a world-class athlete, look like a child. But his height, and thus his long arms, help him deliver massively effective stiff arms. His highlight tapes are littered with them, and while the biggest ones get the most notoriety, they're not the ones that contribute the most to his success. It's awesome that any human being can literally just shove someone away from them off their feet and into the ground, but that's not the reason Derrick Henry may be going to the Hall of Fame. These types of stiff arms, where he's blowing past people and keeping them away from his legs, are far more valuable to Henry and his team. So how do you stop a 247-pound running back with breakaway speed that can dole out massive stiff arms, all while taking 20 to 25 carries a game for an entire season? Well, I'm not out there giving it a try, I'll tell you that. But looking at how world-class athletes on defenses across the NFL attempt it, there's not exactly a fatal flaw, but something that may get overlooked if you didn't know to search for it. Since Henry is so tall, his center of gravity is higher than most running backs. Successful running backs that keep their legs churning through the pile are usually built lower to the ground, and they have abnormally strong lower halves. Think of players over the past 20 to 30 years like Maurice Jones-Drew, Jerome Bettis, and Marshawn Lynch. All were under 6 feet tall, and all made their living running between the tackles. Henry's style, at 6'3", is way more upright, and he does less of his work between the tackles. They all also had great contact balance, meaning a strong tackle attempt may not knock them to the ground. Henry, on the other hand, runs way more upright, and he does less of his work between the tackles. If you try to tackle him high, it's not going to go well. But if you go for his legs, he actually doesn't truck through people like you think he would, like Marshawn or Earl Campbell did. It's easy to just say go for his legs, but that seems to be a defender's best bet in dealing with the conundrum of trying to stop Derrick Henry. There's actually an even more important way that Henry's size has allowed him to be so successful. His big body has given him the chance to withstand his large workload, which has allowed him to be a workhorse in an NFL that has largely moved on from those types of running backs. Since Henry took a full-time role in 2018, he's had 387 more carries than the second most used back, Joe Mixon. And in today's age of running back by committee, having a workhorse is unique. The prevailing thought in analytical circles is that running backs don't matter, and that teams should be passing more anyway. But for the Ravens, and the Titans before them, Henry brings a home run ability along with the ability to handle a full workload to the running game that's tough to ignore. It's easy to suffer from confirmation bias when you look at Derrick Henry. You see how big he is and just think, of course, he runs over people, that's why he's awesome. But looking at the stats, as well as taking an unbiased look at how he piles up the yards, proves that his value actually comes from his top-end speed, and a little bit of stiff arming along the way. Let's say everything else about King Henry was exactly the same, but he didn't have his great speed. Would he still be the best running back in the NFL? Or just a huge running back who was able to carry a full workload, but didn't necessarily change the game? Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.